Hi, thank you. Here, have a microphone. I'm Robert McBride of All Classical Portland. Carlos might be a little bit late tonight because he's at a dinner event of some sort, and I ran into Val Phillips backstage, and I thought, well, let's start with him.
Hi.
He's a violinist in the Oregon Symphony, so he can tell us all about how horrible it is to be a violinist in this orchestra and play for a conductor who used to play the violin.
Oh, it's not horrible at all. People often think that, well, if the conductor is a violinist, he must get on the violins a lot. And I would have to say that in my experience, it tends to be the opposite for the following reason. If the conductor is a cellist, then when something goes wrong in the cello section, because it's really difficult, they say, oh, well, I know that's difficult, so I'll leave it alone. But if something is difficult with another group of instruments, they just think it's bad. They don't know why, like it's really difficult. So they tend to be more demanding of an instrument that they're not familiar with, because they just say, oh, it doesn't sound good. Can you sound better? And they might insist on something that is actually very difficult for that group.
You're reminding me of a situation some years ago. A friend of mine was in a play. It was a comedy. I don't remember which one. And I asked him how rehearsals were going, and he said the director would say things like, it needs to be funnier. Okay.
Well, I can't do anything about that, but yeah, right. Yeah.
And you just happen to be married to Sarah Kwok, the concertmaster of this orchestra.
Well, I wouldn't put it at like I just happened to be married. Like
it was
so
an
we
accident.
just bumped into each other at a chapel and like
they were in Las Vegas, and it happened.
Yeah.
So how long have you two been shackled together?
We will have our 13th anniversary on Tuesday.
Oh, what are you going to do to celebrate?
Thank you. We're just going to Ondina, actually, one of our favorite
I love that restaurant. Yeah.
I think everybody goes to that restaurant.
Yeah.
Oh. I'm conducting tonight, so you have to. You have to practice.
That's right.
Shall I hand you the?
What? You can stay.
No. Well, but they're only two.
Well, let me just ask him one more thing. You and Sarah together as violinists and husband and wife and partners and playing in the same orchestra and living in this beautiful city, it all has just come together wonderfully for you, right?
It really has. I must say that it's not very often that couples that each play in an orchestra get jobs at the same time, especially in the same orchestra.
Yeah.
So we were very fortunate that it worked out the way that it did. Very often couples are playing in orchestras in different cities, or one person is playing in the orchestra and the other one is waiting for an opening, and they, of course, may or may not get that. So we were very, very fortunate in how things worked out with our moving to the city. And the city's fantastic and the orchestra's fantastic. So
That's true. Val Phillips.
Thank you.
Thank you for not letting
And Carlos Kalmar, who is now off the hook for joining the violin section.
Yeah, I
tonight.
only have to conduct.
only have to conduct, yeah. So tonight you'll be playing hide and seek, and you'll be suffering from malaria. And the only cure for malaria is more Mahler. And hide and seek, I'm sure Alban Gerhardt can find all the notes in that cello concerto, right?
That's actually an interesting, the analogy is interesting. You worked a lot. Did you spend your entire afternoon kind of looking for that one?
No, but I did take a nap.
So Saturday Night Live is next?
This is it, man. Prime time.
Oh, yeah, it is. The cello concerto, this cello concerto that we are going to play is actually a sort of not so normal piece. Because after it was written, it disappeared completely from the planet, got probably lost somewhere in one of the many libraries that actually have autographs of Haydn, but without having written on the music that it is by Haydn or anybody else. So this is a treasure, and everybody nowadays, this is probably the even more popular of the two cello concertos that Haydn wrote. And now it's completely normal to play this all the time, over and over. But since, I think, 1965.
It was lost for 2 centuries, but it was known that it existed because Haydn had a catalog of his works. It wasn't complete, but it had a lot of things in there, including a few notes of music from this C major cello concerto. And the guy finds this stuff in a library in Prague and looks at the theme here and looks at this theme in Haydn's catalog and goes, well, what do you know? Here it is. And this sort of thing happens once in a while, and it could happen again. There could be, maybe we'll find the lost movement from Eine kleine Nachtmusik. There was a 5-movement piece, and one of them was torn out, and who knows where that is.
Well, the thing with that is that since I have lived 38 years of my life in Vienna before moving to Portland.
And he looks like it too, doesn't he? He looks Viennese, kind of.
I don't know what that means, but the thing is, we have so many churches in Austria with archives. And of course, over time, here and there, really rarely, you might find a chorale that was never discovered or something like that, mostly by people like Haydn, but not Joseph, but by Michael Haydn and stuff like that. And of course, you go on a treasure hunt because you actually want to find the symphony number 175 by Haydn or something like that, or something really big that you know has been lost, or you want actually to find the pieces that, yes, you know that the composers were unsatisfied with and burned. But you think maybe they did not burn it. They just stacked it way in the dungeon. And, well, it doesn't happen. This was not in a church, the Haydn Concerto. It was just not catalogued well. And it was in Prague, in a big, big library. And so they discovered, and then here it is. And overall, I also think this is an unusual piece because when you say Haydn and you expect Haydn, you certainly do not expect Baroque music. You expect actually classical music that where the relationship between Haydn and Mozart, for example, is very apparent. And in this piece, in part, you actually hear the influences from 70 to 100 years before. And that is very unusual for Mr. Haydn to actually have that. At first, my guess is if somebody knows very well classical music and Baroque music and the style, but has never ever heard this piece, and you present it, that person will probably guess wrong and will not guess Haydn. At least not in the first movement. Aside from that, what can be said about this concerto?
It's really hard to play.
Oh, please, yeah. Alban, Alban was always says the same, that this is probably one of the hardest concertos that exist. Yes, in other concertos that he plays, and he has a huge repertoire, being an acrobat and being a virtuoso is harder. There are bigger shifts and all of that. But essentially, in other concerts, even our beloved concert by Antonin Dvorak, which is the best cello concerto ever written, you kind of can save yourself by vibrating a lot. Meaning, if you don't play exactly clean, just vibrate a lot, and oh no, what does it matter? In Haydn, sorry, no. You cannot miss a note. Everybody will notice. You cannot miss the intonation of the note. There is whenever it comes to these classical composers, there is a huge list for us interpreters that says, don't do this. This is a do not do.
What do you mean? You're talking about specific things within a piece not to do?
No, not just Don't over-vibrate.
Yeah, okay.
Don't miss the intonation. Play the rhythms correctly. Please phrase and articulate the way I wrote. And by the way, I didn't write that much because in my time, actually, musicians knew how to articulate without me telling them stuff like that.
And please play it fast enough, because sometimes things come out kind of too labored sounding, I think. But we don't really know how fast Haydn would have conducted this cello concerto.
I assume that on our day and age, because of the ability of players, we are playing things anyway faster than back in the old days. I mean, I look at Alban in the last movement that you're going to hear and think like, oh boy, wow, like all over the map.
The last movement in both this Haydn cello concerto and Mahler's Fifth Symphony have a lot of notes, and they go by really fast and really high spirits, and you're going to be smiling at intermission and when you leave this concert hall tonight. Those are both so much fun. So this is the end of Alban Gerhardt's 3-year tenure as artist in residence with the Oregon Symphony, but he will be coming back to perform again.
He will come back because he's one of our most treasured soloists, but I must say that you know, when we started this idea of having an artist in residence and including this artist, whenever he comes for a week, to work this artist kind of to death and include this artist into the community, we thought we would do well with Alban because of his outgoing personality, but we did even way better with him. He's an amazing artist in residence. And every time, over 3 years, I was always sent his calendar of what he actually does. And I am always like, how can you actually work so much? Because as on the side you have a little Haydn concerto, or last year it was this Shostakovich second cello concerto, which is so wonderfully difficult. Anyway, but he does.
He's playing in bars and restaurants,
I know that
hospitals.
He was together with Wally today at 3 o'clock, playing with the Bravo Kids. And that's only one. Yesterday he played in a correction facility for youth, amongst other things.
There's a great picture of him playing somewhere for some hearing impaired people who asked to touch the instrument. So they're gathered around him with their hands on the cello.
Yeah, he played, I don't know whether it's called the society, titles escape me, but something like the Parkinson's Society. And where the Parkinson patients moved to music, and he said it was that alone when he was playing and they moved and they felt was amazing. But then some of them who are hearing impaired just wanted to feel the vibration of the cello. So he was playing and they put their hands on the instrument, and things like that blow your mind.
That actually reminds me of a story about Merce Cunningham when he was dancing in Martha Graham's company. He was in the premiere of Appalachian Spring, for example, with her. One day she said, we're going to have a very special guest at class tomorrow. So they're all in class tomorrow, and Helen Keller walks in. And she asked to be able to have her hands on one of the dancers. So Merce Cunningham was standing at the bar, and she came up behind him and put her hands on his waist, and he moved, and he jumped into the air and floated back down as dancers do, and she said, how light, like the mind.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah. And allegedly true.
Well, one of the few that are true that you tell.
Yeah. I don't know about the dance world. Certainly in the classical music world, there are a lot of stories that we just don't know. Like Haydn's, I don't know how macabre you want to get tonight, like Haydn's skull being separated from his body after he died.
Yes.
That was true. That's bizarre.
Not a legend. Yes, it's true. His skull was buried somewhere else. Yeah, it's not a legend.
We should do a concert along this theme for Halloween sometime. True, bizarre stories about.
You know, there are so many ideas for concerts that I actually
Not
have, where I
enough
think,
concerts, yeah.
oh, this should be a special. But, you know, you never know, because this is a very big hall. And I mean, today I was just studying music, other pieces, and I thought, what about a concert that deals with humor in classical music? Just funny, really funny. Because I was, okay, never mind. One day,
Someday.
I was specifically looking at a piece of actually very modern music, because I had heard about what it is, and I was listening on YouTube and laughing out loud about the things that this composer does.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Isn't YouTube great for research?
Love it, love it.
I'm sure there are some great Alban Gerhardt YouTube videos. I haven't looked, but there must be probably a lot. Did you see and hear the little cello orchestra performing in the balcony tonight? Absolutely made my day. They're students of Valdine, Michigan, who has a studio in Lake Oswego, I guess. Little kids with these little cellos, up to full-size cellos, and they were playing up there. They were fantastic.
Yeah, there is a lot of talent here.
Wow, so there will be pictures of them on the Oregon Symphony Facebook page, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
That's great. All right, but we digress.
Slightly.
So what else is new?
Oh,
Should we talk about Mahler?
oh yeah, let's talk about that guy.
Gustav Mahler, Symphony Number 5, one of the great starting points in symphonic music in the 20th century. He started it in 1901 and turned out a really cool, awesome, fun, fascinating piece of music. I was thinking today that in a way Mahler is the opposite of Verdi, actually in more than one way. But in this respect, Verdi wrote a lot of really catchy tunes which he would underpin with these simplistic pa-pa, pa-pa, pa-pa accompaniments. Mahler would only do that for a second or two at the most. So much of the time, everybody's doing something interesting. And it's so fascinating to listen
Well,
to.
first of all,
He's going to disagree with me now.
Yeah, let's just disagree, because I'm very sorry, but this is just a very different school of thought. It's the Italian school of thought and the German school of thought. The German is way, way, way more contrapunctual, meaning melody against melody, sometimes even more than only two.
He goes nuts with that in the last movement of this. It's
Oh,
really
please,
fun.
it's crazy. So I actually think that this tata, or whatever Mr. Verdi writes is fantastic. Because if you don't like
I didn't say it wasn't good. I just said it was different.
okay, because if you don't like it, at the end you will argue with me about the quality of music by Rossini. And no, you lost case. I love Rossini too. But anyway, Gustav Mahler, yeah, Symphony Number 5. This is, it's not for the first time, but this is a journey that we are all going to embark together tonight when it comes to Gustav Mahler. And it's a very substantial, long journey. And somehow you have to look at Mahler as a person, artist, and at Mahler during his entire life. Because Mahler is very well known as a symphonic composer. He wrote symphonies. Essentially, he wrote 9.5 symphonies and the Song of the Earth and a few songs here and there. That's all there is. There is not more. And during his journey, I believe that Gustav Mahler goes from this very muscular, somewhat mostly positive, neurotic human being into darkness. Because the later he gets, I mean, he only got to be 51 years old when he died, but in the last two pieces, we played actually the Song of the Earth last year. Beautiful song, but it ends, I wouldn't say desperation, but it ends very clearly with the end of life. Then comes Symphony Number 9, which way more ends with the end of life, and then comes Symphony Number 10, where he only wrote the Adagio, which is way beyond existence anyway. So what's going on with this guy? And the breaking point, if you will, is this symphony you're going to hear tonight. Because in the first symphony, he draws a lot from songs, and it's very positive. And at the end, it's triumph and da-da-da-da-da. Second, well, it's the resurrection. What do you expect? Resurrection. The third, which eventually may come here with the Oregon Symphony, eventually, hint, hint. Whoa, really? We'll see. That's even the longest symphony that he wrote. It's over 90 minutes, but it's not darkness. Then comes number 4, which is very light in character, and now. And all the first 4 have something to do with songs, and 5 has not. 6 has not, 7 has not. And here, all of a sudden, his kind of tone of voice changes. He gets way darker. He gets even more neurotic, and he goes all over the place. And actually, what we were talking about, the art of counterpoint, this is what interests him a lot in this symphony, aside from the sheer expression of what he wants to tell us. The other aspect is that Mahler very often has something to do with program music. You can kind of follow a storyline one way or the other, and it's easy to follow the storyline when actually there is a song on which a symphony is based. And since in this one there is no song on which you can base the symphony, there is no storyline, but there is a program. But what the program exactly is, it's not very clear.
Well, one thing that's really interesting is at the first downbeat, the first rhythm we hear is the same thing as the rhythm at the beginning of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. It's a different character, it's a different sound, it's a trumpet solo, but it's the same rhythm. And I have to think he was referring to Beethoven 5. That can't be a coincidence, can it?
I love it talking to Robert because we are going to debate all the time. That's so great. That's exactly what I love. No. No. Sorry. No. The relation, I mean, first of all, the rhythm is not the same. No, yeah, I know it's 3 notes and a quarter, or 3 notes and a half note, but there is...
Probably starts on the beat though, huh?
Ah.
And Beethoven doesn't. Ba-da-da-da.
Pa-pa-pa-pa.
Right.
Or da-da-da-da.
Right.
Da-da-da-da. It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No.
No, you're absolutely right. Thank you.
What is for sure true, I thought like you were going to mention Symphony number 4. Because, you think this symphony is so separated from all these other works, but it's actually not. In the Symphony number 4, in the climax of the first movement, out of nothing comes da-da-da-da, da-da-da, with which the symphony starts. Now, the real point is, you come to a concert, you are in whatever mood you are, but you are willing to just, I don't know whether the expression enjoy the music in whatever way the composer wrote it, then the first thing the composer puts in front of you is a funeral march. Isn't that wonderful? So he already, you start kind of with a downer in this symphony.
Nowhere to go but up.
Actually, the interesting point is that the second movement, to some extent, it gets worse.
It's the most angry and intense.
It's very angry.
Yeah.
So you have this. This is not the first time when Mahler writes a movement in a symphony which is a funeral march. First symphony, third movement, it's a funeral march. Second symphony, first movement, it's not a funeral march, it's a funeral everything. And this one, and this is the depth of the sadness is amazing, and it's very internal. And it breaks out only once, but anyway. And then after the last nail is in the coffin, at the end of the first movement, comes the anger about what just happened.
That last note is kind of like a nail in a coffin. It's very dry.
Very like, pop, dead.
We're back to Halloween.
Yeah, Mahler and Halloween. And then there is a lot of anger, angst, and remembrances of what the first movement was, and then we end in triumph in the second movement. Like it goes towards positive in a chorale, so you think. Because he just hints you the chorale, and you're like, I can breathe, and then, meow. That's how it ends. Really goes down from there.
Then the third movement is really interesting. It's this big scherzo with all kinds of ideas, and it's like he has this idea and he runs with that for a while, and then this other idea flits by and he grabs onto that one and runs with that for a while. And it's fun.
The third movement is so difficult. It is so difficult to play, so difficult just the concept of what do you do with this, because it's large, it has an enormous amount of notes and a lot of melodies, and it's also somehow between a waltz and a slow waltz for the most part, but it has this sarcasm, this irony, this sentimentality. But and then at the end, which is another point, is it goes completely crazy. I mean, it's like you dance yourself until you fall over.
And you love conducting it, right?
You know, the thing is, I don't say that seriously, but I have conducted this symphony quite a few times, and it's always, the experience is always somewhat similar, which is at the end of the second movement, you just want to go home. because you have given so much of whatever it is, and you think there is nothing there.
But it's like running a marathon. You're going to find more strength.
Actually, that is exactly what it is.
Hey, you agreed with me. Did you see that?
It's pretty much running a marathon, and after the second movement, you are at mile 14 already, meaning you're like, but there are a few to go. And then comes third movement, and the third movement somehow takes you places, and after the third movement, you're just fine, because you look forward to what is going to happen. And what is going to happen is the famous adagietto, which is a very heartwarming, beautiful love song for his wife, Alma.
And the strings are going to sound so beautiful. I just know it.
This string section at the Organ Symphony, amazing what they can do. And then we go directly into the last movement, which is a lot of happiness. Not only, but it's like, hey, everything is okay.
It's gonna be all right.
It's gonna be all right.
But it's very exuberant happiness. It's kind of like a giddy teenager falling in love or something.
Exactly, and because of its length, at times you might think, oh, it's like somebody screaming at you, be happy, be happy, be happy. Not always. And the fun thing, just to kind of make that connection, because he's going to, if we don't finish, he's going to spank me. The fun thing is that after Symphony number 5, Mahler writes Symphony number 6, which is obvious, which also has everything that was positive in this symphony we just go down the hill, sorry. Everything ends in tragedy. And one last hint, which just because whenever we talk about Gustav Mahler, we talk about a neurotic person. Imagine somebody at the best time in his life, happiness all over with Mahler personally. He was doing well. And what does he write during this time? A funeral march and the songs for the death of a child. who understands Mahler anyway?
And on that note, oh, is Alban signing? I bet he is signing autographs at intermission. You don't
Scott
know?
will say something about that, I'm sure.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for coming tonight. It's great to have you here, and you're going to love this concert. Carlos Kalmar.
Robert McBride.